Structure of bones, we are ready to take a look at how they are assembled in the body. The skeletal system is comprised mainly of bones, around 206 of them in an adult to be specific, but there is also a good amount of cartilage, joints, and ligaments, which altogether make up around 20% of a person's body mass. We will get to joints a little bit later. First, let's check out all the different bones in the body. As we recall, there are two sections to the human skeleton, those being the axial skeleton, made of the skull, vertebral column, and thoracic cage, and the appendicular skeleton, made more or less of just the limbs. Let's go through the axial skeleton first, starting at the top with the skull. The skull is a fascinating structure, made of 22 different bones. Cranial bones are the ones that protect the brain, and facial bones are the ones that give structure to the face. Most of the bones in the skull are flat bones, and in the cranium, these are connected at serrated lines called sutures. The cranium is made of a vault as well as a base, and we should note that the base is divided into the anterior, middle, and posterior cranial fossae. Together, these produce the cranial cavity, where the brain sits. There are also ear cavities and nasal cavities, as well as orbits, which house the eyes. Altogether, there are 8 cranial bones. There is the frontal bone, 2 large parietal bones, the occipital bone, 2 temporal bones, the sphenoid bone, and the ethmoid bone. The cranial bones are connected, as we said, by sutures, and those have specific names as well. These are the coronal, sagittal, lambdoid, squamous, and occipitomastoid sutures. We should also mention the foramina, which are holes that nerves and arteries and veins pass through, most notably the foramen magnum at the base of the skull, through which the spinal cord passes. Moving on to the facial bones, of which there are 14, we can start with the mandible, which is the lower jawbone. Then there are maxillary bones, which form the upper jaw and part of the face. Next we have 2 zygomatic bones, which are the cheekbones, nasal bones, which make up the bridge of the nose, lacrimal bones, palatine bones, the vomer, and inferior nasal conchae. Lastly, technically not part of the skull, there is also the hyoid bone, which sits just below the mandible and does not connect with any other bone. Next up in the axial skeleton is the vertebral column, also called the spinal column, or simply the spine. This is comprised of 26 irregular bones that come together to form a flexible structure in a curvy S shape, and this supports everything from the skull to the pelvis. The spine can be divided into 5 sections. At the top, we have the cervical vertebrae, which are the first 7. The next 12 are called the thoracic vertebrae. The remaining 5 are called the lumbar vertebrae. We should note that the vertebrae get larger as we go down in order to support more and more weight. Below the vertebrae, we can find the sacrum, which is actually 5 vertebrae fused together. And lastly, below the sacrum, there is the coccyx, otherwise known as the tailbone, which is made of a few tiny vertebrae fused together. Of course, there is much more to the spine than just the vertebrae. There are lots of ligaments keeping everything together. The main ones are the anterior and posterior longitudinal ligaments, running down the front and back of the column from the neck to the sacrum. There are also shorter ligaments that connect adjacent vertebrae, as well as intervertebral discs. These are cushiony pads made of a nucleus pulposus, which is the more elastic part, surrounded by an annulus fibrosus with lots of collagen. These are found in between each vertebra, acting as shock absorbers when we run and jump. Now let's look a little closer